My name is Brooke Bennett. I'm 30 years old. The month. Everything cracked open. I was sitting at our dining table with a credit card statement in my hand and a pressure behind my eyes that had been building for so long it almost felt normal. Ethan Cole, my boyfriend, was in the bedroom getting ready for another weekend trip with his friends. His fourth one that year. I could hear drawers opening and closing, the scrape of hangers, the easy, unbothered rhythm of someone packing for a life that did not require calculation. He hummed under his breath while I stared at columns of charges and did the math I was always the one forced to do. Flights, hotel, restaurants, bottle service. I looked down again, just to make sure anger had not distorted the numbers. It had not. Ethan, I called, keeping my voice level. We need to talk about these trips. He appeared in the doorway a second later, adjusting the cuff of a shirt like we were discussing something small, something domestic, something forgettable. What about them? This Miami weekend alone is going to cost around $3,000. He leaned one shoulder against the frame. Okay? I lifted my eyes to him. That makes $12,000 this year, on trips. He gave a short laugh that didn't sound amused so much as irritated that reality had interrupted him. Brooke, I work hard. I'm allowed to enjoy myself. That was always his first defense, not denial, entitlement. I set the statement flat on the table. We're supposed to be saving for the wedding, for a house, for an actual future. He rolled his eyes and walked toward the kitchen island where he'd left his watch. God, you make everything sound miserable. I watched him fasten it around his wrist. I'm not trying to make anything miserable. I'm trying to understand how we're building a life together when I'm covering rent, utilities, groceries, your car payment, and you're still spending your paycheck like you're 22. He turned, finally looking at me directly. You say that like I forced you. No, I said quietly. You just got comfortable with it. That landed. Not heavily, not enough to make him think. Just enough to make his expression sharpen. We had separate accounts, technically. That was the arrangement he always pointed to whenever he wanted to call himself independent. But independence is a funny word when your salary becomes weekend money, because someone else is carrying every dull, necessary part of adult life. I was the one paying for the apartment because his credit history was a mess. I was the one making sure the lights stayed on, the fridge stayed full, the insurance got paid on time, the calendar stayed organized, the landlord stayed calm, the future stayed possible. And somewhere along the line, Ethan had started treating that as the natural order of things. He picked up his phone from the counter and checked it, barely listening now. Why are you making this into some huge issue right before I leave? Because you leave every time this conversation gets inconvenient. That did it. He let out a breath through his nose and laughed again, more openly this time. You know what your problem is? I said nothing. You think because you're good with money, everybody has to live like you. Budget spreadsheets, long-term planning, delayed gratification. He said the last two words like they were symptoms of a disorder. Some of us actually want to enjoy our lives. I stood up slowly. I have been funding your enjoyment for almost 2 years. His face changed then, not with guilt, but offense. That's dramatic. No, I said, it's math. For a second, the apartment went very still. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint traffic outside, a neighbor's footsteps in the hall. Then he gave me a look I had never seen that clearly before, a cold little mix of contempt and boredom. So what do you want me to do? He asked. Stay home all the time? Stop seeing my friends? Sit around here and become one of those sad couples who only talk about bills and grocery lists? I want a partner, I said, not another person to finance. His jaw flexed. That sentence hurt his pride more than anything else I had said. He grabbed his suitcase handle and pulled it upright. My trips are not negotiable. I stared at him. He continued, voice flat now, almost rehearsed. My friends and I have done this since college. I'm not giving that up because you suddenly want to act like my accountant. You're not in college anymore, Ethan. Exactly, which means I work all week. I can do what I want on weekends. We have responsibilities. He took 2 steps toward me, not threatening, just dismissive in the most intimate way possible. Then maybe you should find somebody boring. I felt something in me go very quiet. Not broken, not shattered. Just still. I'm asking for balance, I said. This is balance. No, I said. This is me carrying everything while you call it freedom. His mouth twitched. Then, with that casual cruelty people only use when they are certain they hold the power, he shrugged. If you don't like it, he said, then leave. He said it like he was tossing a receipt into the trash. No tremor in his voice, no hesitation, no fear. Just confidence. The kind that comes from believing the person who loves you will always bend first. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I nodded once. Understood. He smiled. That smile is still the part I remember most clearly. Not the words, not even the insult folded inside them. The smile, small, smug, almost amused. Like he thought he had just won a harmless argument. Like he thought I would sulk for a few hours, maybe cry in the bathroom, and then text him before midnight telling him to be safe. He reached for his duffel. Don't be dramatic, Brooke. I'm not being dramatic. He frowned slightly. Then what was that? You told me to leave. He gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Come on. No, I said. You said if I can't handle this, I should leave. His expression tightened. You know I didn't mean it like that. I held his gaze. How did you mean it? He opened his mouth, then shut it. For the first time in the conversation, there was a flicker of uncertainty. He had expected resistance. Tears. Bargaining. Not calm. He tried irritation instead. Fine, he said. If you want to turn this into some huge thing, go ahead. I'm not doing this right now. I'll be back Monday. We can talk when you've cooled off. He dragged the suitcase toward the door. Didn't kiss me. Didn't tell me he loved me. Didn't even look back when he left. The lock clicked, and silence fell over the apartment so suddenly it almost rang. I stood there for maybe a minute, maybe 10, I'm not sure. Then I sat back down at the table and looked again at the statement in front of me. There is a strange kind of peace that comes when confusion ends. Pain, yes. Humiliation, absolutely. But also clarity. I called my older sister Chloe. She answered on the second ring. Hey, what happened? No hello, no small talk. She knew my voice too well. I swallowed once. Do you still have that guest room? There was a pause. Then, yes. I need somewhere to stay for a little while. Another pause, softer this time. Brooke, she said carefully, did he finally do it? I almost laughed, which would have turned into crying if I had let it. He told me to leave. Chloe was silent for half a second, then exhaled hard. Then leave. 3 words. No pity, no panic. Just the kind of steady support that makes it possible to keep standing. I'm packing now, I said. I'll be here. I started with essentials. Clothes, laptop, passport, financial files, a small lockbox of documents, the jewelry my mother left me, my work bag, chargers, prescription bottles from the bathroom cabinet. I moved calmly, which felt unnatural enough to be frightening. No dramatic shoving, no tearing through drawers in fury, just selection, decision, removal. When I opened the closet to pull down my weekender bag, a paper shopping bag tipped sideways from the upper shelf and spilled receipts onto the floor. I knelt automatically to gather them. At first, I thought they were old grocery slips or pharmacy junk we had forgotten to throw away. Then I saw the headers. Las Vegas, 2 months earlier, one of his guys' weekends. I sat back on my heels and sorted through them one by one. High-end club charges, VIP table service, hotel purchases, a receipt for a spa package that definitely wasn't part of some football-watching weekend. And then the one that made my fingers stop. A boutique receipt from a women's designer store. $512. Silk blouse, gold bracelet. I stared at it, then at the date, then at the store name again, just to be certain I wasn't misunderstanding something stupid and harmless. I wasn't. My pulse slowed in that eerie way it sometimes does when the truth steps out from behind a curtain and finally lets you see its face. He had never bought me that blouse. He had never bought me that bracelet. I took out my phone and photographed every receipt carefully, making sure the dates and totals were visible. Then I placed them back in the bag exactly as I had found them. By the time I zipped my suitcase, the apartment no longer felt like home. It felt staged. Like the set of a life I had spent too much money and tenderness trying to hold together. I left after midnight. Chloe opened the door before I even knocked. She was wearing an old university sweatshirt and reading glasses, her hair tied up, like she had been pretending to do something normal while waiting for me. The second she saw my face, she stepped aside and let me in without a word. I carried my bags to the guest room. She followed, leaned against the doorway, and crossed her arms. You don't have to explain tonight, she said. I looked at her. Thank you. She shook her head once. No, thank yourself. I didn't understand what she meant then. I turned off my phone before bed. When I woke the next morning, I understood. 43 missed calls, most of them from Ethan's friends. A few from unknown numbers. 2 voicemails. 3 texts from Ethan, all sent late, each one angrier than the last. Where are you? Why is your card not working for the hotel hold? Brooke, answer me. This is insane. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then another text came in from one of his friends. Ethan's card got declined at brunch. Did something happen? I had removed him as an authorized user from the cards linked to my accounts before I went to sleep. He still had his own cards. He just preferred using mine for points, convenience, and the quiet assumption that I would clean up whatever his fun cost afterward. I locked my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. By Sunday afternoon, Ethan finally texted from his own number again. My car payment bounced. What did you do? I read it twice. Then I typed back. I left like you told me to. The reply came instantly. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I looked out Chloe's guest room window at the pale afternoon light settling over her quiet street. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I didn't feel confused. He had meant it. He just hadn't expected me to listen. Monday morning, I took a personal day from work and went back to the apartment before Ethan's flight landed. The hallway smelled like stale air conditioning and somebody's burnt toast from 2 floors down. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, and for a second I just stood there, listening. Nothing. No music from the bathroom speaker. No half-finished podcast playing from the kitchen counter. No careless movement. No Ethan. Just the apartment itself. Clean, quiet, temporary. I had already taken the essentials the night I left, but this time I came for the rest of what was mine. And I was precise. That mattered to me. I did not touch his clothes. I did not touch his sneakers lined up by the wall, or his cologne on the dresser, or the watch box. He treated like a museum exhibit. I left his gaming chair because he bought it before we moved in together. I left the framed photos of his family because I had no interest in becoming the villain in the version of the story he would eventually tell. But I took the television I paid for, the sound bar, the coffee machine he used every morning without ever noticing who had ordered the filters, the kitchen mixer, the air fryer, the vacuum, the Wi-Fi router under the entry table, the lamp beside his side of the bed that he liked for late-night scrolling, even the expensive shower head I had installed after he spent 6 months complaining about water pressure. Mine. All of it. By the time I was done, the apartment looked less like a home and more like a rental listing that had been stripped for staging. Functional, technically, but hollowed out. I left one sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. Ethan, as suggested, I left. Rent is paid through the end of the month. After that, it is your responsibility. Your belongings are untouched. Mine are gone. Please communicate by email regarding move-out logistics. Brooke. I stared at the note after I set it down. Then I reached into my bag and placed one more thing beside it. Printed bank summaries. Trip expenses. Highlighted totals. Not every charge, just enough. 4 boys' trips in 1 year. Thousands of dollars. A number so ugly in black ink it made me feel embarrassed that I had tolerated it for as long as I had. I left before noon. At 1:48 p.m., the text started. Where is everything? Then, 2 minutes later, you took the TV? At 1:53. Brooke, are you actually serious right now? At 2:01. The Wi-Fi doesn't work. At 2:06. This is theft. At 2:18. I'm calling the police. I was sitting at Chloe's kitchen island with a mug of coffee when that one came through. She glanced at my face. What? He says he's calling the police. She took a sip of tea. For taking your own property out of your own apartment? I let out a dry breath. Apparently. At 2:47, another message arrived. They said if it's yours, you can take it. Then, at 3:11, can we please just talk? At 3:26, Brooke, come on. At 3:40, I'm sorry, okay? I read every message. I answered none of them. That evening, he tried calling 7 times in a row. I declined each call. Then came the voicemail. His voice was tight, lower than usual, the edges sanded down by fear. Brooke, this has gone far enough. I said something stupid, you made your point, now call me back. I mean it. This is insane. You can't just disappear and pull the rug out from under me over one argument. I listened to it once, then deleted it. Over one argument. That was what he thought had happened. Not years of imbalance, not erosion, not entitlement layered so gradually it learned to call itself normal. Just one argument, one bad weekend, one misunderstanding. It was almost impressive, the way he could live inside a story where none of this had been earned. Tuesday morning, he showed up at my office. I knew because reception called my extension just after 10. Brooke, our front desk coordinator said carefully, there's a man here asking to see you. Ethan Cole? I closed my eyes for 1 second. Through the glass wall of my office, I could see 2 analysts walking past with binders in their hands, the ordinary rhythm of a workday still moving around me. My pulse stayed steady. I'm unavailable. There was a pause. He says it's urgent. If it's urgent, I said, he can email me. Another pause. Then, a little more quietly, he seems upset. I looked down at the spreadsheet on my desk. Revenue forecasts, vendor margins, numbers, clean things, rational things. That is not a reason to bring him back. All right, she said gently. I'll handle it. I stood and moved toward the window that overlooked the front lot. 3 minutes later, I saw him. Dark jacket, jaw tight, one hand cutting through the air while he talked to building security, like indignation itself should be an access credential. Even from that distance, I could read the disbelief in his body. He kept glancing toward the entrance like I might appear at any second and make this easier for him. I didn't. Security walked him back toward the curb. He turned once, as if the building itself had betrayed him. My phone lit up almost immediately. "You had security remove me?" I said it face down. A minute later, 5 years, Brooke. 5 years and this is how you act? That one I stared at longer. Not because it hurt, because it revealed him again. He still believed duration entitled him to access. That years automatically outweighed behavior. That history should protect him from consequence. By Wednesday, the mutual friends began reaching out. At first it was cautious. "Is everything okay between you two?" Then more pointed. "Ethan said you left him stranded." "Someone else." "Did you really clear out the apartment while he was gone?" And then, "He said you cut him off financially out of nowhere. That feels extreme." I answered each variation the same way. "Ethan told me to leave if I could not accept his lifestyle. I left. I also stopped funding that lifestyle. That's all. No insults, no paragraphs, no emotional autopsy. Just the cleanest version of the truth." Some people never replied after that. Some sent awkward messages about how they didn't know it was like that. One of his friends, Nolan, actually called. "Hey," he said after I answered. His tone was strange, careful. "I just wanted to ask directly before I say anything stupid. Was Ethan seriously not paying for anything?" I leaned back in my chair. He paid for almost nothing consistently. There was silence on the other end. Then, I thought he was joking. "About what?" "He used to say you were the responsible one, and he was lucky you liked taking care of things." He exhaled softly. I didn't realize he meant all the things. I looked out the window. He did. Nolan was quiet for a beat. "That's bad." "Yes," I said, "it is." By Thursday, Ethan tried to take control of the narrative publicly. He posted on Instagram, a black background, white text, one of those self-important, vague little statements people use when they want sympathy without specifics. Some women say they want an equal partner, but what they really want is control. The second you live your life on your own terms, they punish you for it. He tagged me. I saw it because 3 different people sent screenshots. I opened the post while sitting on Chloe's couch, and for a moment I just looked at it, not angry so much as fascinated. He had turned me into an oppressor in a story where I paid his bills. Then I scrolled to the comments. That was where it went wrong for him. One woman wrote, "Didn't you just post from your 4th vacation this year?" Another, "Living on your own terms in whose apartment?" And then the one that really cut, "Independent men usually pay their own car notes." I actually laughed. Not loudly, just once into the quiet of the room. Chloe looked up from her book. "What?" He tried to post about toxic women. "How did that go?" "Poorly." She smiled without looking surprised. "Good." The post was gone within an hour. Friday night, an email arrived. Subject line, "Please read." I opened it at the kitchen table after dinner. "Brooke, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I shouldn't have said what I said. I was stressed, and I handled it badly. I never meant for this to happen. I can't afford this apartment alone. I'm behind already, and my cards are almost maxed. I've barely eaten since I got back because everything has been a mess. Please come home so we can talk like adults. We can fix this. I can cut back on trips. We can start saving again. I love you. I just need you to stop making this worse." Ethan. I read it twice. Then once more, slower. Not for sentiment, for structure. I was stressed. I handled it badly. Please come home. We can fix this. I love you. Stop making this worse. It was almost artful, the way the responsibility kept drifting away from him in the wording. Never quite landing. Never staying. He wasn't sorry because he finally understood. He was sorry because the system had collapsed and he was trapped under the pieces. I replied 20 minutes later. Ethan, you are not apologizing for a single sentence. You are apologizing because your life became inconvenient when I stopped carrying it. You were honest the day you told me to leave. You want a lifestyle I am no longer willing to fund, and I want a partner who understands responsibility. That does not make either of us misunderstood. It makes us incompatible. You have until the end of the month to vacate the apartment or arrange another approved occupant with the landlord. After that, I will move forward formally. Please do not come to my workplace again. Brooke. His reply came in less than a minute. You can't do this to me. I looked at the screen, and something about that sentence made my chest go cold. Not because it was threatening, because it was childish. Because even now, after all of it, He still spoke as though life were something being done to him by harsher people, rather than shaped by his own decisions. Saturday morning, he tried a different approach. Flowers. A huge arrangement arrived at Chloe's house, somehow forwarded from my old delivery profile. White roses, hydrangeas, eucalyptus, the kind of bouquet people order when they want the price tag to do half the emotional work. There was a card tucked inside. "No more fighting. Let me make this right." Chloe read it over my shoulder and snorted. "That's not an apology, that's a coupon." I laughed before I could stop myself. Then I carried the entire arrangement straight to the trash enclosure behind the house. When I came back in, my phone had another message. "Did you get the flowers?" I typed one sentence. "Do not send gifts to my sister's address again." Then I blocked his number for the first time. The silence after that felt different. Cleaner. Not because the damage was gone, because I had finally stopped leaving a door cracked open for him to keep reaching through. Sunday afternoon, I sat on the edge of the guest bed with my laptop open, going through old account statements and copied receipts with a kind of focus that felt almost surgical. I built a timeline. Dates, charges, transfers, shared expenses, late fees I had quietly covered, moments I remembered emotionally, now paired with numbers I could finally see clearly. And that was when I noticed the pattern. The same weekends he claimed were random getaways, with the guys often included charges that did not belong in that version of reality. Boutique purchases, extra hotel accommodations, rideshare records at hours that didn't fit the stories he used to tell me. One transaction from a rooftop restaurant he had sworn was just wings and beer with the guys. I zoomed in on the digital statement. 2 entrees, a bottle of champagne. Not wings, not beer. I sat very still. A memory floated up without invitation. His ex-girlfriend, Savannah. Pretty in a polished, deliberate way. Dark hair, quiet voice. The kind of woman who always seemed to appear in the background of old group photos even after the relationship was supposedly long over. Ethan used to call her harmless. Ancient history. Someone he barely spoke to anymore. But there had been little things. Her name mentioned too casually. A reaction she left on one of his stories late at night. A funny coincidence when she showed up at a birthday dinner 6 months ago and Ethan acted surprised half a second too late. At the time, I told myself not to be insecure. Now, with the statements glowing cold on my laptop screen, insecurity was no longer the word for it. I did not have proof. Not yet, but I had the beginning of a shape. And shapes, once they start forming, rarely go backward. I closed the laptop and leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling, while dusk slowly dimmed the room. Down the hall, Chloe was on the phone, laughing about something with one of her friends. A kettle clicked off in the kitchen. Outside, a dog barked once and then again. Ordinary life continued. But underneath it, I could feel something else shifting into place. The breakup was real. The financial collapse was real. But I had the strange, prickling sense that I still hadn't reached the ugliest part of the truth. By the second week, Ethan stopped pretending this was just a misunderstanding. He started trying to pull me back in, not with logic, with pressure. Saturday morning, a new email appeared. Subject, we need to talk. Brooke, I'm late. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but this could change everything. We need to figure this out together. Ethan, I stared at the screen. For a second, my brain didn't even process it properly. The sentence just sat there, vague and heavy, designed to provoke panic. Then I leaned back in my chair. We hadn't been intimate in over 2 months. Even before that, things had been infrequent, mechanical, distracted. I typed back, "We haven't been intimate in over 2 months. Try again." There was a long pause. Then, "I meant late on something else. You're twisting things." I didn't respond. That was the moment something inside me locked into place completely. Not sadness, not anger, clarity. He was willing to manufacture fear to get my attention. Whatever version of Ethan I had loved, he wasn't in the room anymore. By Monday, he switched tactics again. Nostalgia. Old photos appeared on his Instagram story. Us at the lake. Us in the kitchen, flower on my cheek, his arm around my waist. A blurry shot from our first apartment, when everything still felt like it was beginning. The captions were vague but pointed. Some people give up too easily. Not everything broken has to stay that way. I watched the story once. Then I closed the app. For a few hours it worked. Messages came in from mutual friends. Maybe you guys just need time. 5 years is a lot to throw away. He seems really torn up. I didn't answer any of them, because the photos weren't lies. They were just incomplete. They showed who we were before he decided my stability was something he could spend. Tuesday afternoon, the missing piece arrived. Not from Ethan, from Derek. He called instead of texting, which already told me something was off. "Hey," he he said, his voice lowered like he was somewhere public. Are you sitting down? I moved to the edge of Chloe's couch. What happened? I just saw Ethan. My chest stayed calm. Okay. With Savannah. That name again. I didn't interrupt. They were at a spa, Derek continued. Couples massage place. I didn't think anything of it at first, but then he stopped. Then what? They weren't acting like exes. I closed my eyes for a second. Define that. They walked in together, close, like comfortable. And when they came out, he hesitated. They kissed. Not quick, not awkward, like it wasn't new. The room went very still. Not in a dramatic way, just quiet, like the last piece of a puzzle sliding into place. Are you sure? I asked. I wouldn't have called if I wasn't. I let out a slow breath. Okay. Brooke, he said carefully. I didn't want to assume anything, but... You didn't, I said. You confirmed something. He went quiet. You okay? He asked after a second. I thought about that. About the receipts. The boutique purchase. The late-night transactions. The way Savannah's name had hovered around the edges of things for months, always just far enough away to dismiss. I am now, I said. And I meant it. After I hung up, I opened my laptop again, pulled up the Vegas receipts, zoomed in on the boutique purchase. Silk blouse, gold bracelet, Savannah's style. Not mine. I searched through old messages, photos, tags, and there she was, wearing that exact blouse. In a picture Ethan had liked, posted 3 weeks after that trip. My fingers stilled on the trackpad. Not a coincidence. Not a misunderstanding. A pattern. He hadn't just been irresponsible. He had been living a second version of his life, and I had been funding it. Strangely, I didn't cry. There was a time when this would have destroyed me. But that version of me had been eroded slowly, quietly, over months of being dismissed, minimized, and expected to carry more than I should. Now all I felt was relief. Relief that I had left when I did. Relief that the confusion was gone. Relief that I wasn't imagining the imbalance. I closed the laptop. And for the first time since everything started, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt. Because it made sense. Ethan didn't know I knew. And that became important faster than I expected. Because 2 days later, he made a mistake. A loud one. Thursday night, he threw a party in the apartment. I found out the same way everyone else did. Instagram. Music blasting in this background of someone's story. Bottles on the counter. People I didn't recognize crowded into the living room I had paid for. Caption. New beginnings. I watched the video twice, then a third time. Not for the people, for the damage. Shoes on the couch. Red wine near the rug. Someone smoking by the open window. The kind of careless destruction that comes from people who don't feel ownership of a space. My phone rang 10 minutes later. The landlord. Brooke, he said, voice tight, I've received multiple noise complaints about your unit tonight. I don't live there anymore, I said calmly. My ex is still there temporarily. He's not on the lease. I'm aware. There was a pause. Then, I'm going to need this resolved immediately. This violates the terms. I looked back at the video, frozen on a frame of someone laughing with a glass tilted dangerously over the carpet. I'll handle it, I said. I didn't call Ethan. I didn't text right away. I waited. Let the night unfold. Let the damage happen. Let the evidence exist. By the next morning, more clips had surfaced. Broken glass on the floor. A stain spreading across the rug. Someone dancing on the kitchen counter. I took screenshots of everything. Saved them. Organized them. Then, at 10:14 a.m., I sent one message. You have 48 hours to vacate the apartment. You violated the lease terms with your party. This is formal notice. His response came instantly. You can't evict me. Another message right after. I have rights. And then, Savannah's dad is a lawyer. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. Deflection. Name dropping. Borrowed authority. I typed back. Then he can explain tenant rights for non-lease occupants who violate noise and damage clauses. There was no response. Monday morning, I met the landlord at the apartment. Chloe came with me. Not because I needed backup. Because witnesses matter. The door was unlocked. The smell hit first. Alcohol. Smoke. Something sour underneath it. The living room looked like a before and after photo where the after had been deliberately ruined. Wine stains ground into the carpet. Scratches along the coffee table. Cigarette burns on the kitchen counter. Trash bags overflowing near the door. The landlord walked in slowly, his expression tightening with every step. This is extensive, he said. I nodded. I have documentation. I showed him the photos. The videos. The timestamps. He exhaled sharply. I'll have to assess everything, but this is easily several thousand in damages. Send me the bill, I said. I'll take care of it. He looked at me, surprised. You don't have to. I'm on the lease, I said. I'll handle it. What I didn't say was the second part. and then I'll handle him. Ethan wasn't there. Neither was Savannah. They had already left. Of course they had. That was the pattern. Enjoy the moment. Disappear before the consequences. But this time, the consequences had my name on the paperwork, and his actions attached to the proof. As we stepped back into the hallway, Chloe glanced at me. You okay? I looked back at the open door, at the apartment that no longer felt like mine in any sense that mattered. Yeah, I said. And I meant it, because this wasn't chaos anymore. This was structure, cause, effect, and the beginning of something that, for once, I was in control of. It's been 2 months since I walked out of that apartment with a suitcase and a sentence he never thought I'd take seriously. Long enough for the noise to settle. Long enough for patterns to finish revealing themselves. Long enough to see clearly where everything actually landed. Shanked. The bill from the landlord came in 3 days after the inspection. $3,240. Carpet replacement, surface repairs, cleaning, smoke remediation. I paid it the same afternoon. Not because I wanted to protect Ethan, because I wanted control of what happened next. Documentation matters more when your record is clean. I filed the claim against him a week later. Every receipt, every photo, every message, neatly organized. He didn't contest it. He couldn't. I still live with Chloe, not because I have to, because I chose to slow down. There's something grounding about her house in the evenings. The way she cooks without rushing. The way the TV hums softly in the background. The way no one is asking me to explain, justify, or absorb anything that isn't mine. I didn't realize how tense I had been until that tension left. Work changed almost immediately. Without constant distractions, I started finishing things early, taking on more responsibility, saying yes to projects I would have avoided before because I didn't have the bandwidth. 3 weeks ago, my manager pulled me aside. We've been watching your numbers, she said. Whatever you changed, keep doing it. I nodded. I didn't explain. How do you summarize the absence of chaos? Financially, the difference was almost embarrassing. In 2 months, even after paying for the apartment damage and legal filing fees, I saved just over $7,000. $7,000. I stared at that number on my banking app longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand it, because I did. That wasn't new income. That was the absence of him. The dinners, the trips, the little things that added up. The quiet, constant bleed of resources I had trained myself not to question too loudly. He hadn't just been irresponsible. He had been expensive. I heard about him the way you hear about someone you used to know. Indirectly. Filtered through other people's conversations. Derek filled in most of the gaps. They're not doing great, he said one afternoon over coffee. They? Ethan and Savannah. I raised an eyebrow. I thought that was his upgrade. Derek gave a short laugh. Turns out upgrades cost money. I didn't say anything. He leaned back in his chair. From what I've heard, she thought he had more stability than he actually does. Of course she did, I said. That spa day, he continued. Apparently not the first time, just the first time they got seen. That tracked. Secrets don't fail because they stop happening. They fail because they get careless. She moved out of her place, Derek added. Thought they were going to figure something out together. And then reality showed up. I looked down at my coffee. And he couldn't afford it, I said. Derek nodded. Not even close. The friend group fractured faster than I expected. Not because of me, because of what came out after. Savannah hadn't just been an ex. She had been around, quietly, repeatedly. Enough that once people started comparing timelines, things stopped lining up in a way that could be ignored. The trips, the overlaps, the coincidences. No one likes realizing they've been standing in the background of someone else's lie. Trust doesn't crack cleanly. It splinters. And when it does, people start pulling away to avoid getting cut. Ethan reached out once more. A different number. Late at night. I almost didn't open it. Almost. Brooke, I know I don't have the right to ask anything from you. I just wanted to say I understand now. About everything. I messed up more than you know. I'm trying to fix things. I hope you're okay. I read it once, then set my phone down. There was a time when that message would have undone me. The apology. The acknowledgement. The version of him that sounded almost like the person I used to believe in. But timing matters. Understanding after consequence isn't growth. It's recognition. And recognition doesn't rebuild what someone chose to dismantle. I didn't reply. A week later, I ran into his mother at a grocery store. It was one of those quiet, fluorescent-lit places where everything feels slightly too bright and slightly too ordinary for complicated conversations. She saw me first. Brooke? I turned, basket in hand. Hi, Mrs. Cole. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. How are you? I'm doing well, I said. She nodded slowly. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, for everything. I held her gaze. You don't have anything to apologize for. She sighed softly. We may have made things too easy for him. Growing up. That didn't surprise me. It explained more than it excused. He's learning now, she added. I hope so, I said. She hesitated, then gave a small, sad smile. He talks about you, says he didn't realize what he had. I adjusted my grip on the basket. He realized, I said gently. He just didn't think it would go away. She closed her eyes for a second, like that landed exactly where it was supposed to. That sounds like him. We stood there for a moment longer. Then she reached out and touched my arm lightly. Take care of yourself, Brooke. You too. I watched her walk away between the aisles. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger when I thought about him. Just distance. There's one more thing. About a month after everything ended, I met someone. Not dramatic. Not intense. Just steady. His name is Daniel. We met through a cycling group Chloe convinced me to join. He shows up on time. He pays attention. The first time we went out for coffee, he insisted on splitting the bill without making it a statement. It was so normal it almost felt unfamiliar. We don't talk about the future like it's something to rush toward. We just build small, consistent moments. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. Last week, I checked my finances again. Ran the numbers. Projected forward. If I keep this pace, I can put a down payment on a small condo within a year. A real one. Not a dream built on someone else's instability. Something quiet. Something mine. Ethan told me to leave if I didn't like the way he lived. He said it like a threat. Like I had nowhere better to go. Like I would stay because I always had. He was right about one thing. I did leave. He just never understood what leaving would actually take with it. Not just me. Everything I had been holding together for him. The structure. The stability. The life he thought would keep running, no matter how little he respected it. The last I heard, he's working extra shifts. Trying to catch up. Trying to rebuild. Savannah is gone. Of course she is. Without the illusion, there wasn't much left to stay for. Some people think endings are loud. Explosive. Obvious. But the truth is, the most important ones are quiet. A sentence. A decision. A door closing without being slammed. If you don't like it, then leave. I did. And that was the moment everything finally started working.